I'm Bob Cooney. You probably know that. And I'm coming to you live from Melbourne, Australia, as you can see in the background. And we're here on lockdown like the rest of the world. And and wow, man, what a world we find ourselves in. And I want to thank you for joining to the very first episode of the Being Virtual show. And I'm here with Kylie Savage, who's my producer, business manager, director, editor. And so if all of this goes wrong, it's her fault. And so now we're in this new world, and we're all working remotely, and we're isolated, and we're separated, and it's going to require us to use new tools and develop new ways of being. And I think above all, we need to figure out how to maintain kind of our sense of humanity. And so this show is really going to be about how we go about that. And I feel like I've got a bit of a unique, I've been a virtual being now for a long time. I've worked remotely for 20 years. I've lived remotely for the last 4 years, and I've been in virtual reality and different types of immersive entertainment for 30 years. So I feel like I've got a unique perspective that I just want to share with you guys, and hopefully it's helpful. The show is new. We're making it up as we go along. This is what I would call a pilot episode. So bear with us as we work through bugs and kinks. And it's the first time we're live streaming to multiple platforms. We're on Periscope, Twitter, YouTube, multiple Facebook pages. And so hopefully this works. And if it doesn't, let us know, drop us a line. You can always send an email at vrbob@bobcooney.com and let us know your experience and things that might have worked or not worked, or what you liked or didn't like, and we'll try to improve those. It will get better as the weeks go on. And so my job here isn't just to tell you what's happening. What I want to do is try to focus on, and I think I do this, why it matters to you and what you might want to do about it. The first thing we're going to do is let's just cover some news. And so I don't even know what to make of this slide. I just thought it was funny, and we could use a laugh. And I know this isn't a funny situation, but I've always used humor as a way of coping with stress. And so bear with me in the segment. I actually had a Facebook contact when I posted the show, suggested we started with a stand-up routine. And that was only a couple of days ago. So I might try my stand-up chops at some point in the near future. Now, the Olympics, as you know, has been postponed, and we're not quite sure how long they're going to push it off, probably to 2021. But they did release a new logo of the Olympic rings for the coronavirus years, which I thought was interesting. And this just in, celebrities have been reporting their experience with COVID-19. And apparently Chuck Norris just announced that he came into contact with the coronavirus, and the coronavirus is now in isolation for 30 days. Now, there's been we're all watching streaming media, and the internet has had to slow itself down. There's been a great movie. If you haven't watched this movie, by the way, there's some great horror movies if you're not scared enough by reality and watching the news. Get Out from Jordan Peele is one of my favorites, and he just announced a new movie, which is a sequel called Stay In, which I think is relevant. Now, you all know about the toilet paper shortage, and there's also a shortage of face masks, which is not funny at all if you're a healthcare worker. But if you're not a healthcare worker, I think people are finding really novel ways to try to stay safe. Not recommended. Make sure you pull these out of the unused cabinet if you're going to try that. I don't know. This is, I think these are water bottles set up but I thought maybe that at first they were aliens saying, take me to your leader. This looks like a full body condom using saran wrap and a jug of something. And I think this one's a good one until we run out of laundry detergent, and then you might want to shy away from this strategy. And not only has there been a run on toilet paper and face masks, but now there's rumor that Germany, there's hoarding of sausages, and the German government is freaking out because that actually is their worst case scenario. And that might be the worst joke ever. And so this next segment we call Insight, which is really covering the latest news around being virtual in the new reality. And it's not virtual reality, which I've spoken a lot about, and most of you know me as kind of the VR guy, or the location-based VR guy. This is more about tools that we can use in this new, what I'm calling human reality, right? Because we're all separated, we're all acting virtually, but we need to stay human. And what's more human than people driving cars really, really fast? And so this guy's named Lando, not Calrissian, Lando Norris. For those of you that don't follow Formula One racing, it is the most popular racing sport in the world. And this guy's been, he races for McLaren, pretty good team. And he's one of the most popular drivers. And he's been playing racing games online against his fans. And so Formula One now and McLaren have partnered to create the virtual Grand Prix. And they have real racers and other people racing online in esports. Check this out.
Just wants to be in a race of his own, just chill out front. He'll be leading the race at some point, unless he loses too much time to Danny that he has a free pit stop. But yeah, interesting to see it from Lando. That F1 mind, he's got it switched on at all times, even when it's not a Formula One.
For Vikings, we're now watching Super GT go on the attack of Thibaut Courtois. Maybe Thibaut Courtois just got past him. Super GT not able to go for a move there down into turn 3. And Thibaut Courtois, the Real Madrid driver, the Real Madrid goalkeeper, has now moved up into the points. He's up into P9.
What happened was they were supposed to have the Melbourne Grand Prix here a few weeks ago, and they actually kept saying, we're going to do it, we're going to do it, we're going to do it, right as things were about to tip over. And then at the last minute, they canceled it, and the drivers were already ready to race. And they said, hey, let's just do the Melbourne Grand Prix in a virtual way. And they used the Codemasters F1 2019 PC game. And by the way, Codemasters is a public company on the London Stock Exchange. If you're liquid and you're looking for investment opportunities, some of the esports companies, as you'll see, might be interesting places to place some bets. But what you're seeing is top drivers in esports and other athletes. Thibaut Courtois, if you don't know, is the goaltender for Real Madrid, which is the #1 football or soccer team in the world, right? And so you're seeing this crossover of different athletes from different sports and celebrities come in and racing live in esports. And that's going to drive the interest in esports in a massive way. Now, this photo, this is courtesy of Chase Elliott via Twitter. And Chase Elliott was recently voted in 2019 as the most popular driver on the NASCAR circuits. And he races for Hendrick Motorsports. And this is a photo of Corey Williams, who's a fabricator for Hendrick Motorsports. This guy builds race cars. And what he's done is he's built a racing rig for Chase Elliott to drive in the virtual NASCAR events. Now, Fox, which is one of the big networks in the world, really, but in America, broadcast its first virtual NASCAR race a couple of weeks ago, and it drew almost 1 million viewers. Now, it was on FS1, which is one of their lesser distributed networks. It's a pay network, so it's in a sports tier for a lot of cable subscribers. Now, the largest NASCAR race ever on television drew 3 million viewers, or just over, and it was in 2015, so it's been declining ever since. And so based on the performance of this virtual race, Fox picked up the entire virtual season, is going to be broadcasting it on their mainstream Fox Sports network, and you'll be able to stream it online on FS1. And so they like it so much that they've now crossing it over to dirt track racing.
Tonight on FS1, an iRacing special presentation of the world of outlaws racing from the virtual dirt track at Charlotte. We'll have a doubleheader.
It's gonna be huge. This is mainstream media getting into esports and broadcasting it instead of regular sports. Now, the fact that regular sports has shut down means people are starving for entertainment, right? And you can only watch so many episodes of Lock and Key on Netflix. Now, not to be outdone, NBC Sports recently announced they're going to be broadcasting an esports version of the IndyCar season. So the Indy 500 and Daytona are both going to be virtual this year. at a time when people are locked in their houses with nothing to do. And so my imagination is viewership is going to go through the roof. Now, how long before other sports join in? So Kevin Durant and 15 other NBA players have already announced they're going to be doing a virtual basketball esport tournament that's going to be broadcast on ESPN. And Major League Baseball launched an esports venture in China last year, and they're trying to figure out what to do with their season. So I would expect you'll see Mike Trout and who knows who else, Aaron Judge, playing MLB The Show maybe on PlayStation and broadcast to the world. And MLB Advanced Media is one of the kind of cutting edge companies in technology and sports. So my guess is they've got a plan, which is why they were experimenting in China last year. Now, God forbid we're still locked down in September. Will the NFL be played in Madden? And what if this goes on to January? Will we watch the Super Bowl in esports on Fox? It's going to be fascinating to watch. Now, GameWorks, which is an FEC chain, also has an esports business, and they build these esports lounges inside their family entertainment centers. Now, as you know, the whole entertainment industry is shut down almost globally. And so what they've done is they've launched an iRacing league for their players to play from home and compete as a way to stay connected with their customers and stay relevant while their businesses, their retail businesses, are shut down. And next week, we're going to talk a lot more about how you might be able to stay connected with your customers during this lockdown while your business is closed. Now, I want to talk about consumer VR a little bit. So this is the big news last week. Half-Life Alyx, Valve released on a whole bunch of headsets. This is some gameplay footage, courtesy of Valve via Upload VR, which is a new site about VR. If you know about it, you should check it out. And watch the interactions. What Valve has done is they've set a new standard for best practices on how to interact with environments and objects in virtual reality. Now, I'm sure this video is using their knuckle controllers, which are state-of-the-art. But what's going to happen is everybody's playing this game, certainly in the VR space. All the developers are going to be playing it, and they're going to be experiencing new ways to interact with environments. And this is going to drive innovation in virtual reality and make those interactions so much more natural. Half-Life Alyx is about a 12-hour game, 15 hours if you're like me and you suck at games. But you can just play with little things. It's fun opening doors and tearing off bars and picking up things and dropping them down. Now, it's expensive. They spent a lot of money developing it. Not every developer is going to be able to create environments like this that Valve can, because they just literally print money. But I think you're going to see this is going to drive a whole series of new interactions, and they're going to get a lot better in the future. Now, conferences are being impacted all over the world. Not just live events and sports, but every conference now has been canceled, from CES to now it looks like in the Olympics. Now it looks like Dubai is talking about postponing Expo 2020, which is one of the biggest events in the world, until maybe 2021. And South by Southwest was recently canceled, which was hard for them. They've run it for 20 years. They've never canceled it, and a group of intrepid XR enthusiasts banded together and helped them bring some of their panels online and into virtual reality. But Amazon recently stepped in and announced they're going to be streaming to anyone with a free Amazon account all the movies that were going to be in the South by Southwest Film Festival, all the feature films, and that's going to be for 10 days in America only. Sorry if you're in the rest of the world. Hopefully somebody else picks that up and runs with it. And then the South by Southwest shorts are already available on MailChimp. So if you go to MailChimp, you'll Google MailChimp South by Southwest. You'll see all of the short films from all of these amazing creative filmmakers now available for free. And the HTC Developer Conference recently, a couple of weeks ago, went online into VR with a platform called Engage, and you could watch it on YouTube. And the IEEE conference also went full VR as well. Now, there's a big VR conference every year in France. It's called Laval Virtual, and it's it's the oldest and probably most prestigious of the VR conferences. It's been going on since 1999. Between 10 and 20,000 people show up every year until this year. I was going to be there in a couple of weeks, moderating some panels and speaking and blah, blah, blah. Doesn't matter. But I was lucky enough, they're making it virtual, and I was lucky enough to catch up with Harriet Bartlett recently. And she talked about her consideration process and their decision to take Laval Virtual virtual. So Harriet, when the French government cracked down and basically said you can't have any conferences, you could have postponed it, but you decided to go virtual. Why was that?
We're Laval Virtual. If we don't do something virtual, it makes no sense.
Now, you've decided to mix 2D streaming and 3D VR content. What are the challenges with having a conference entirely in virtual reality?
And sitting and watching, because I don't know if you try, but in VR, if you stay inside and you watch a conference for an hour or two, you just like get out of there and you're tired or you get a little bit dizzy. And we know that we would have loved to have a solution that would have all included, like 2D, VR, etc. But today, those platforms are basically not ready. And even for the ones that are ready, it doesn't support all the different softwares or hardwares. People who are going to access the platform may not actually have headsets or any devices in their hands, right? So, and we also have a lot of decision makers coming to Laval, and we all know that even if we are geeks and have the softwares or the hardwares at home, they actually don't.
So you did a lot of testing, and I know you have a lot of experience with various platforms out there for, remote conferencing and remote communications. What platform did you guys wind up going with?
What we are going to do is stream from the conferences anyway, from Verbella, so we're using Verbella, to Outspace through YouTube. So you will be able to actually get out of your headset or get out of your computer in the virtual world and just go on YouTube if you're just not feeling like it and just need the noise in the background and listen to the conferences and not just be there and chatting with people.
Now, with conferences all around the world, looking at going virtual now, how do you see that impacting VR technology and its ability to really replicate what people want out of a conference?
I believe that interaction inside of VR is going to go to another step, so that you feel more like if you were really going to a conference. I mean, if you go to engage, you can fist bump people and you feel it.
Now, when I go to a conference, it's often to see the people who I've known for years. And the only time we get to connect is on the conference circuit.
Well, the best part of going to even is networking and seeing people. And even if you go to the conferences, you really need to go and be able to meet people on one-to-one meetings or just chat and having a drink, even if it's a virtual drink, like just meeting people.
Well, Harriet, I really appreciate you taking the time to, talk to me today. And I really appreciate everything that you're doing for the community. And I really look forward to seeing you online in a couple of weeks at the conference and hopefully at a live event sometime soon. Have a great day. So I know we all have a lot of time to consume a lot of media. I'm trying to stay away from the negative stuff and really focus on the positive news and what's happening in the world and in business. And so one of the resources that I go to is a guy named Alan Smithson. He's got a great podcast, not just because I was on it recently, but he talks about everything XR. So if you're not checking out the XR for Business podcast from Alan Smithson, I highly recommend it. And so now we're going to talk about what now. Like this is about what do we do? Like we're in a crisis. Let's call it what it is. And the world is changing really rapidly, and I tell people it's almost like I call them coronavirus years, which is like dog years, and they're only 10 times longer. Like I woke up, we were in New Orleans at Amusement Expo. It ended on Wednesday. I woke up Friday morning, and Thursday we were talking about a product launch that we were planning on doing on May 4th. And on Friday morning, I woke up to news that the border was closing to America from Europe, and we were supposed to fly to Europe. And we decided to get the next flight to Australia. We got here Sunday morning. Sunday night, they announced, quarantines for anybody coming in. Monday morning, I woke up and like, what world am I in? I was supposed to be in Europe. 3 days ago, I was talking about a product launch in May that maybe now won't happen until July or whenever. And so things are happening really quickly. And what I want to do is try to reframe reality a little bit, and which might not feel so real anymore, and look for opportunities to thrive. And how do we do that? I think there's a lot of great resources online now. The Entrepreneur Magazine has a great article called 10-Point Small Business Survival. I'm going to post links to these in the chats below the feeds, and these will also be on my website this weekend with a replay of this live stream. So all of these resources will be available for you to download. The U.S. Congress recently passed the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, Economic Security Act, which is called CARES. And it makes me wonder, I think the U.S. Congress, the only thing they like more than beating each other up is acronyms. And how much time did they spend trying to come up with a name of an act that actually spelled a word that was relevant to what they were trying to do versus crafting the bill itself? Nevertheless, they found a way to spend $2.2 trillion, $350 billion of it going into small businesses. And this is the first time in my life I've seen in a crisis governments immediately step up around the world to really help small and medium-sized businesses. And this act is for any company up to, I think, 500, or the small business part of it, anybody up to 500 employees. And in the US, it covers, I think, 2.5 months of payroll. If you continue to pay your employees, that debt can be forgiven at the end of the period. So it becomes a grant. And I know in Germany, they're paying 80% of the wages to employers to keep their employees on staff. And I know the UK has a program similar to that, Netherlands. So governments around the world, and what they're doing, which I really like, is smart, is they're keeping employees connected to the companies rather than have them shift over and go on the government teat, which can be a bit, discomforting and addictive. And this way makes it easier for businesses to ramp up again, because if we don't go back to business soon, the effects of this are going to be longer and longer and worse and worse. And so kudos to those of you in policy that are realizing that you need to keep employees and companies connected. Now, this is from a McKinsey & Company report, which I'll also post a link to. They've become an authority on this area, and they're talking about 5 things that business owners and leaders need to do as you move through this process. And they talk about, the first step is resolve, which is this really takes resolve. And I think the quote they used was from a CEO saying, "I know what to do, but I just need to decide whether those that need to act share my resolve." And it reminds me of this reminds me a bit of the Untouchables movie, where Sean Connery talks to Elliott Ness, Kevin Costner, and he's like, what are you prepared to do to go after Al Capone? And this is the question I ask you: is what are you prepared to do to save your business, but also, show resilience and help your employees build resilience, which is that second thing. It's no longer just about making money, and that, for now that's over. That might be over forever. And so this balance of taking care of your employees, taking care of your customers, taking care of each other needs to be balanced with making money. And that's that, resilience thing that we're going to have to believe. And then they talk about return, because we want to return to business. We have to return to some sense of normalcy, whatever that is. And you hear talk about a new normal, because things are going to change, and you're going to need to reassess your entire business. It's possible we might see a second surge of the virus after it comes down. Like, nobody knows yet. And we'll talk a little bit next week about how to manage in complexity and crisis. But for now, what I like to start doing is reimagining what's going to happen. Like, jump to step 4. What are some of the shifts in preferences and expectations of consumers, of employees, of citizens in general, and how might that create opportunities for us to change things in the future? I think you're going to see that the cuts that we're making, and everybody by now has made some sort of cut, right? We've been forced to, if we haven't done it voluntarily, is showing it's kind of drawing an interesting line in the sand between what I thought I needed but was a nice to have and what I actually need, like toilet paper. And so I think that as those lines get redefined, you're going to see massive shifts as people reimagine what they need. And then ultimately the last step is, reform. And you have to think about how are the governments going to continue to act. Government's role is control. It's almost the reason they exist. And you're seeing them clamp down. Just here in Victoria, which is the state where Melbourne is in, they've said that you can't play golf anymore. You can't go fishing. You can't go on a boat. And recently, today, an epidemiologist came out and said that's ridiculous. Talk about social distancing. Have you ever played? You could have a twosome on a golf course and not be within a quarter of a mile of somebody else. Or if you're on your own boat, what's wrong with that? And they said that has nothing to do with the viral spread of disease. That has to do with control. And so 9/11 in America. Before that, you could get it on an airplane without showing ID. And what happened was the airlines realized that now that you have to show ID, change fees, revenue. Now, 9/11 created billion-dollar revenue streams in checked baggage and change fees for the airline industry. How are these new control mechanisms being put in place by government? Which ones might stick? How might they create opportunities for your business, as the airline industry saw in change fees and baggage fees? And what risks might be associated with that? And so you can't start thinking about that too soon. The other part of the McKinsey report that I thought was really interesting was, we tend to be optimists, and there's a show, I think it's called The 100 or something like that, and on Netflix, and they basically have 100 people and they ask them a question, and the first segment is 100 people and they ask them, do you think you're in the top 50% of best looking people in this group? And like 80% of the people raise their hand, right? So we always tend to towards the optimistic view. And so McKinsey's surveyed a bunch of leaders, and they show that this top right segment is what they expect. And the left axis is basically virus spread based on public health response. And the bottom is the knock-on effects based on economic policy. And, so everybody believes that the top right quadrant is where we're going to go. And I certainly hope that, and you certainly hope that, and not to be a downer, but we do need to prepare what it might look like if it takes longer, or the spread isn't checked, or we don't comply with the government restrictions around social distancing, or the economic recession is so great that no matter how much money they dump into the country or in the economies around the world, it doesn't come back as fast as we think it and we want it to. So anyway, food for thought. So check the link for McKinsey. It'll be in the show notes. It'll be on my website at bobcooney.com, hopefully this weekend. I want to show you about another podcast. It's called Attraction Pros. These guys, if you're in the attractions business at all, these guys are running a great series right now on how to deal with the coronavirus crisis and COVID-19. Check them out. If you want to hear more of me, you can't get enough of Bob. There's an episode, I think goes back to August, where I talked about something that probably feels irrelevant in today's world. But I really like what these guys are doing. So check out their podcast. And now I just want to see if there's any questions. So we're streaming to a bunch of platforms, and we're supposed to be streaming to YouTube, Twitter, via Periscope, and a couple of Facebook groups. And so if you want to try to put a message in chat, I'd be more than happy to answer your questions. And I'm going to turn to Kylie and ask her, do we have anything coming through? So we're using a platform called Restream. First time we've used it live, really. And so, like I said, there might be some bugs in the system. We are going to have a new episode coming up on Wednesday, and we're going to do a bit of a deep dive. Speaking of deep dives, before I get to that, Kylie's done a great job of taking the deep dive webinars that I was doing last year. We did, I don't know how many, 40 episodes or so. And those were long form video, about an hour each on YouTube. But she broke them down into 20-minute segments and turned them into a series of audio podcasts. So you can get them on anywhere you can get a podcast, Spotify, iTunes, Anchor, etc., etc., etc. So if you missed any of those episodes, you want to go back and check them out. They're in little bite-sized chunks, audio only, and just search Bob Cooney Deep Dive on your favorite podcast platform to check those out. We are gonna have a segment on Wednesday where we're gonna talk about this show and the making of it and the tech stack that we used and the things that we've tried and the things that we think are working. And because everybody wants to be virtual right now, my guess is a bunch of you guys are going to be live streaming. All the cool kids are doing it. You're going to be, if nothing else, you're going to want to up your Zoom game. You might be doing virtual conferences, and I think sharing some of the behind the scenes tech and the decisions that we're making and what's working might be helpful. So Wednesday, we'll be coming to you live, a little bit of a fireside chat of a different format. And then next Friday, we'll be doing a show where we'll be talking about how to stay connected with your customers. We're going to be talking about how to manage in complexity. And then hopefully we're going to have a live guest segment with my friend Charlie Fink, who's been one of the leaders in being virtual for 30 years. He helped start a company called Virtual World Entertainment back in the 90s. And now he's a contributor for Forbes magazine. He's writing a new book on the virtual workplace. And so that's going to be fascinating to check in with him and see what's happening in the virtual work world. So I want to thank you guys for joining show number 1 in the books, and send us your messages. Drop me an email, vrbob@bobcooney.com. Make sure to subscribe. If you're on YouTube, subscribe to YouTube for updates and new shows coming out. And we'll see you on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, wherever you may be. Thanks for joining, and have an awesome weekend. I love you all. Bye.